Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension. Self.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Hello, hello, hello. You're listening to a podcast not only of sound, but also of mind. It's Time to Rewind is a podcast that takes a journey into a wondrous land of time loops whose boundaries are that of imagination. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and each episode my guest and I explore these time loops one loop at a time. This stop is Trapped in the Twilight Zone, and this is the first stop at 2019's Season 1, Episode 3, Replay, starting at the beginning of the episode with an establishing shot of the Busy Bee Diner and ending at 2 minutes and 59 seconds with Nina rewinding her camcorder after Dorian spilled ketchup on his shirt. Here with me today is a very special guest. This is my wife, Kate, and this is her very first podcast appearance. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right.
So, I had a little bit of a scheduling mix-up. So, this is a bit of a last-minute guest, and she has been very gracious in allowing me to have my free time spent making this podcast. So, she agreed to talk a little bit about this episode here with me. So, what did you think about this episode as a whole?
I thought it was very controversial. I thought that, it shows a lot to what racism really is and the struggles that people have every day with the color of their skin.
So I know that most of the Twilight Zone is what you've watched with me. And I'm pretty sure that the only ones that we watched together is like the first season of the Jordan Peele series. Do you remember any of the other episodes from that?
No.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this today's loop here, since this is really the only episode in this entire Twilight Zone that follows a standard time loop format. So this is really the setup, and we start with the opening shot of the Busy Bee Diner, and we get the music cue, and the song is Oogum Boogum from Brenton Wood in 1967. And it's, a kind of a classic, a pretty classic song. I didn't even know what they were saying. I thought that it said like hug 'em, but it's Oogum Oogum Boogum Boogum now.
Oh, yeah.
And the phrase Oogum Boogum, it's actually basically just another random magic word, kind of like an alternative for abracadabra.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
And then the Busy Bee Diner itself, it's referenced a few times in the Jordan Peele series because it was actually the name of the diner from the original Nick of Time episode. And that is an episode that I mentioned in an early episode this season. It starred William Shatner, where he asked this devil bobblehead a series of yes or no questions. I forget, did you watch that with me?
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that must have been one of the ones that I watched by myself. But we are introduced to Nina and her son, and this is really where we get a lot of their family dynamics. We find out that her son Dorian is going off to college, and that Nina is basically estranged from her family. She moved out um, early on, and uh, and she's not very close with her brother Neil, which is Dorian's uncle, but Dorian has reconnected to him through Facebook. Um, and then we're also introduced to basically the main antagonist of this episode, the Officer Lasky. And I think it's interesting that the first thing that we actually see as he's coming up to the diner door is it focuses on his gun.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like he's basically just straight out, you can tell that he's very intimidating.
Yeah,
And
even though he's played by oh, I forget his name, but he's kind of a character actor that's um I also recognized him. He was um one of the fellow clowns from Joker, and he
oh, that's interesting.
and I also noticed that he comes in and just orders a meal. He seems, at least at this point, he seems like just a normal officer. And the only thing that we really get is whenever Dorian spills ketchup on himself and he says damn. And that's the trigger that makes Officer Lasky pay attention to them.
Yeah, he pretty much gives them a really dirty look and then looks away.
He gives him the stink eye.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think it is him specifically saying damn. So it's something that's calling attention to themselves, like something, just this casual swearing, I think. And, this is before we really learn how racist Officer Lasky is. But I think that is like, it's him just hearing this casual swearing, and that just like it triggers his racist radar.
Yeah, basically.
It's like there's some black people swearing over there. They must be up to no good. Right?
Basically, his monstrous side.
But other than that, there's not a whole lot to this loop. We get a name drop of Ryan Coogler, which do you think that Dorian's like going to school to study film? Because, Nina says you're going to be the next Ryan Coogler.
Yeah, that's what I basically picked up on, that he was going to college for film and
He's surprised that his mom knows who Ryan Coogler is. And she's like, oh, yeah, I seen Black Panther. Do you know who Ryan Coogler is?
I was like, I'm with her. I don't really know who that is.
Well, you've seen Black Panther, but yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Black Panther, but I'm like, I'm trying to think of who that is.
He's the one that directed and wrote and directed the movie. And before that, he also wrote and directed Fruitvale Station, which was more of an awards movie that also starred Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, okay.
And he's the one that played Killmonger in Black Panther.
And was he a photo? Did he do like photos and stuff? Or
Oh, he's the one. He wrote and directed it.
oh, okay. Because she said he was going to be a photographer, right?
No, she just said, you're going to be the next Ryan
Oh,
Coogler.
oh, okay. That makes sense. Edit that out.
But I think that about does it for this loop. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about a classic Twilight Zone episode. And the one that I picked for today's episode is A Kind of Stopwatch, which it was from the final season, season 5, and it was episode 4. I always remember it because it was parodied in a Treehouse of Horror from The Simpsons whenever Bart gets the watch that stops time.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same thing in the classic Twilight Zone episode. The only difference is it's basically this know-it-all, um, overly talkative guy named McNulty gets this stopwatch that it's able to stop time, and then he wants to show it off so he can become the most interesting man in the room, but he's not able to really learn the right way to show it off because everything that he does happens when everybody's frozen, and so they're not able to see it, so he just like moves things around, and then whenever they're unfrozen, and then everything's moved around, but they don't realize that he did it. And then he basically gets frustrated and ends up he decides to rob the bank. But while robbing the bank, he drops the stopwatch and breaks it. And so so he's basically stuck for the rest of his life, frozen in this instant in time. And that's basically where the episode ends. And I felt like it's one of the lighter episodes because it's focused on McNulty, who's basically this buffoonish character, and it follows a lot of his um his follies, and he brags about all these suggestions that he put in the suggestion box at work, and then he gets called into the boss's office because the boss actually read them all, and they're all just completely random harebrained schemes, like stuff they're almost like Wile E. Coyote, or like shower thoughts, like, or, things like, why can't everybody fly? Just something along those lines. But in general, I think it's still kind of one of the iconic Twilight Zone episodes, mainly just because of that ending. But the rest of the episode was just, on the average side of things. But is there anything else that you wanted to say about the Twilight Zone in general, or about this episode?
I think, in general, the Twilight Zone is, it seems to hits on a lot of people's nerves and some substance, like with the like it has different aspects of the episodes, especially the one where you're dealing with the racist cop, and what people back then had to deal with, and the fact that it's terrible how, like, back then, how much cops got away with treating people with such disrespects. I think it's kind of hard because it's pretty much a touchy subject for people, and it's just horrible.
Yeah, and I think that's why this episode in general didn't really connect with a lot of the viewers. It was, for a lot of people, considered one of the misses from the first season. But then I do have one final question to ask you, and this is a big one. So, how hard is it to put up with all this podcasting?
Well, this being my first time, kind of skittish and overall, but um, doing your podcast, it's fun for you, and like I enjoy like listening to them, and it makes you happy. So whatever makes you happy makes me happy. So
Well, thank you for for coming on the microphone with me, for so I have somebody to bounce my words off of, so I'm not just talking here by myself.
you're welcome. Don't ask me again.
I don't know. I got two more of these, but we'll see how it goes. But
That's fine.
but as for me, I'm Bubbawheat, and as always, and that is Faye. And you can find me at flightstights@movienights.com. You can find me on Twitter at Bubbawheat. And you can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm, as well as anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. And until next time, I will still be right here, trapped in the Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension. Self.
Submitted
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
What you know about Ryan Coogler anyway?
What you think? I live under a rock? That's not Black Panther.